So the other question on this UAP hearings that I've been hearing is why is this in the news now? You know, and the implication from a lot of people on TikTok and stuff is that it's a distraction.
The distraction campaign, kind of like it behooves the government when it's maybe doing these testing of different things. If people think it's aliens, it helps kind of distract and makes it silly, and it will bring detractors pretty quick.
So Thomas, real quick, what's your take on that?
My take on
does the U.S. government have alien craft in its possession?
it depends on how you define alien.
Hello, welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas and Sterling. Andrew is out today because he's not feeling well, unfortunately.
Poor Andrew.
Poor Andrew.
He'll get better, we hope.
He'll get better unless he's contracted an alien disease, which brings us to our topic for today, which is the U.S. government has confirmed aliens exist? ? So we'll be talking about the testimony that's been heard before the House Oversight National Security Subcommittee, alleging, among other things, that the U.S. government has alien craft in its possession. Bum, bum, bum. So, Thomas, real quick, what's your take on that?
My take on
Does the U.S. government have alien craft in its possession?
it depends on how you define alien, I think.
Yeah, okay.
I think
I'm not talking about a truck smuggling Mexicans across the border.
No, and I'm not talking about that either, but I'm saying alien by meaning American or foreign. I guess you could say foreign.
Okay. So you think maybe there's some Chinese spy plane, but there's not extraterrestrial.
Yeah,
beings.
extraterrestrial is probably the way I would put it. I don't believe that's what those ships or whatever. Craft. I guess.
Craft, I think is the term.
Is what they're using. I don't think if it's literal craft,
right?
Some like a ship. I would say it's of human origin.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads to the question, everyone's wondering, are these humans? Are these aliens? What are these? And it's fascinating. Everyone's interested in this. So, Thomas, can you kind of walk us through kind of some of the history that America and the world, but, mostly America has with UFOs?
I think, yeah, in a brief cursory look, the phenomena using that word, which is kind of fun because that's what is now the new definitional term for it, right?
Yes, the new term.
Really, this is mostly a 20th century phenomenon that is kind of focused, most of it's focused within the Western world and specifically the English-speaking world, which I think is kind of fascinating.
Right.
But there is a long history of unknown, you could say unidentified flying objects that people have seen.
Going back to Roswell is the most famous one.
Right, in the 20th
40s.
century, yeah. But before that, there's evidently history throughout going to before.
Well, right. People claim that, some
all
of the
kinds of
carvings and hieroglyphics in ancient Egypt show alien craft.
But really what we're looking at is this kind of, I guess you could call it I don't want to use the term negatively, but the UFO kind of cultural cult of the UFO.
The cult of UFO. I think that's
cult of UFO. And that really has been since post-World War II.
More or less.
There was stories that were getting started. H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds.
Right.
That was at the end. That was 1889, 1898, I believe.
Right. And then the famous broadcast of War of the Worlds.
1938.
Orson Welles.
Right. And so...
or was it Orson Welles?
Yeah. Orson Welles did the broadcast.
H.G. Wells wrote it and Orson Welles did the broadcast.
Yep.
And they're not related.
I don't believe they are.
Huh. I just never put that name similarity together.
Yeah. That is, I didn't even think about that until you just said it. But really the modern kind of, I think how we conceive of UFOs is because of like Roswell, because of...
Yeah.
That was
little gray men in flying saucers.
Right. 1947-ish, I think that's when it is.
48 is what I read.
48.
It was 47.
Anyway. And since then, if you look at the number of sightings or claimed sightings, there's
1947.
There's just gobs of them.
Gobs and gobs. And we have a map here, and we'll see if we can well, I don't think we'll be able to show it on the camera, but it's a map of all the UFO sightings from 1906 to 2014. And most of the world is dark. And then the United States is lit up like a light bulb.
The United States, two places. United States is lit up like a light bulb, and the UK.
And the UK, yep.
And
then there's dots everywhere else. But
a few dots here in the Jura.
Places are really lit up. Yeah. And that includes Hawaii. Hawaii, and look at that. I mean, it's just, you can see every island.
It's interesting map.
Yeah. So if aliens are visiting Earth, apparently they only care about English speakers. Sorry, rest of the world.
No, that's strange.
Well, here's a thought, just while we're talking about that. When you said that they seem to be focused on the English-speaking world. The English-speaking world was the first to industrialize. So perhaps they recognized the advancement of a technology, the steam engine, and they were like, okay, those people who made the steam engine, that's who we go contact. Just a thought.
Maybe. That would be a theory, I guess.
So we War of the Worlds, and then we had there's been differing views on aliens. So War of the Worlds, it's aliens are coming to Earth to conquer and rule, right?
Right. They're a threat. It's the xenophobia kind of idea of alien, right?
Yeah.
They're the stranger danger, danger, Will Robinson danger.
Right. And
that concept of the alien.
Humans win because we're human and we have the advantage of the home field, essentially, is how we win War of the Worlds with the common cold.
Yeah, that was an interesting, with that story, it's actually not even, like you're saying, it's not actually that we humans, our ingenuity had nothing to do with defeating the alien.
Right. And I think the line at the end of the book, I can't quote it from memory, but it's, humanity has won the right to exist by virtue of taking on all comers for its whole existence. And the common cold is one of those threats that humanity has learned to coexist with, but others haven't. The common cold tried to kill us. It failed. We learned to get over it. And so that's why we win, because we refused to die.
And then there's the phenomenon of the good alien.
Right.
Of the alien that's actually coming to...
We come in peace.
Yeah, help humanity, or the concept of the alien as an advanced race that's conquered all the societal ills that still prevail amongst humans.
Right. There's lots of examples of that. I think The Day the Earth Stood Still kind of shows that. But the prime example in pop culture mindset today is going to be the Vulcans in Star Trek. So when the Vulcans contact humanity in Star Trek, it's they wait and they wait and they wait, and then humanity develops the warp engine, and then suddenly the Vulcans are like, oh, we'll come greet you as equals and say you can come join our society, and then they're fast friends essentially from then on in Star Trek.
Yeah, so there's that phenomenon in our culture, our pop culture stories. I mean, I think of Close Encounters of the Third Kind or E.T.
Even though Close Encounters is kind of a mix, because you're not, I think even at the end of the movie, you're not quite sure, are these friend or foe? I guess at the end with all the people coming back out, Amelia Earhart and all them, it is implied that they're not a threat, but they're still so mysterious.
They're mysterious, and that mystery is the scary part, and that's what they're what they're worried about. But those are depictions of the alien as friend, and those two, I guess, competing motifs, you could say, of representing the alien have continued through this day. I mean, you have movies like the Alien. It used to be trilogy, but the Alien movies.
The Alien series, where they're, about as horrifying a beast. They're not, I wouldn't call the aliens intelligence. They're beasts.
They're just killing machines.
Right.
But then you also have like the X-Files, where you have this mysterious, that kind of deals with both. You have good aliens and bad aliens. Yeah. And even the question of aliens.
The Predator movies is kind of interesting because they're a threat. They're coming here to kill humans, but they also have the respect. They're here to hunt humans because humans are impressive thing to hunt down and kill.
Right. I think really Predator is just a repackaging of that famous story with the most dangerous game. But then you were noting
that there's kind of this third category.
Right. What do you want to say?
So you've got the friendly aliens who come and they say, we come in peace, here, take our advanced technology. You have the unfriendly aliens who come and they say, die, we're going to take your planet now. And then you have this third category that I can epitomize by reference to the fairly famous short story called They're Made of Meat And if you haven't read this short story, look it up. It's free online. It's a great, very short story. And it's just this non-organic alien race evaluating through their sensors. They've come across Earth and they're talking about it. They're like, how do they think? And this other non-organic alien says, oh, the meat thinks. And it's like, meat that thinks? What are you talking? That's just crazy. And they go through all these things and they're just like, how can meat think? How can meat speak? Why doesn't it rot? All these things. And then they finally just come to the conclusion that, okay, maybe these humans are intelligent life, but they're too weird. We're not going to deal with them. We're going to just leave them alone. And so it's this kind of third category of aliens that are just too alien for any kind of contact, really. Mm. And you have something similar in the Men in Black movie, the first one. At the end of that movie, you have have you seen Men in Black?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the movie, there's the galaxy that's on Orion's belt. And at the end of the movie, that galaxy is a marble that big giant aliens are playing with. And so like they're so large that our entire universe is in a marble. So they're just aliens.
Yeah, they're so transcendent as to be completely...
There's just no relation between them and us.
There's no ability to even communicate, as it were. And then I think there's almost, I don't know, I would call it maybe a subcategory, a fourth kind of aspect of this. And this is the idea that humans themselves are just another aspect of this greater alien kind of universe. And it's completely accepted that there's all these different species of aliens.
But they're all, every kind of alien. It's just a person.
It's effectively another person.
So that's kind of this Star Wars take where...
Star Wars, Star Trek. I think Star Trek especially really kind of, at least in my mind, really kind of epitomizes this kind of a view of the alien.
Yeah, it does. Star Trek deals with all sorts of things. Star Wars, it's just... Yeah, aliens exist. That's just the way this is. And it's in Star Wars is a little bit different because it's not based on Earth, so it's not human focused in that way. The main characters are still humans, but it's not
galaxy
saying that humans are
far away, right?
Right.
A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Yes.
Yeah.
I wish they would tell us what galaxy that is.
Yeah, I want to go there. I would do just about anything for a lightsaber.
Maybe we would actually get a better story of the last three movies if we actually could go and see.
I'm sure we would. Anything would be better. Twilight's a better story. All right. So that's kind of the cultural history, and there's examples beyond gobs of examples. There's just so many examples of this, of just humans, and specifically I think Americans are fascinated with the idea of extraterrestrial life.
Yeah.
And that, I think it has to do with our going to the moon, especially, and the space race. Yeah. And we just want to know what's out there. And what if there's all these really cool things out there? And so that's kind of
and to segue back to kind of what we started this on, I think the reality of the Cold War and the whole aspect of our government having these really secret projects, that are basically weapons programs,
right? And on that, that's what Area 51 was. That's where the SR-71 was tested. I did look that up. And then Roswell, New Mexico happened in the famous sighting happened in 1947. Well, you and I just watched Oppenheimer, right?
Yes.
And what's the point there?
Los Alamos, right?
Los Alamos, New Mexico, where they do the Trinity test of the first ever atomic bomb.
Right. Yeah.
So I bet there were weird things in the sky in New Mexico in 1947. I have no doubt that there were weird things in the sky, but they were probably American in origin.
Yeah, and you're also dealing with a time period throughout the 1950s and 60s where we're seeing this real big ramp up in pushing the boundaries of technology that we developed, physical technology especially.
Right. I mean,
jet aircraft and a lot of aircraft stuff. I mean, a lot of that was happening.
Well, and really the whole 20th century up until that point, from 1906, the Wright brothers' first ever flight, and then 1969, we're landing men on the moon. That whole era, the advancement of aircraft essentially was the defining technology.
Really, before the Wright brothers, there were, I guess, experimental craft like gliders, but
the French claim they invented the aircraft a week before the Wright brothers.
Yeah, the French do. So the Romanians do as well.
Do the Romanians?
Yeah, they have.
No one even knows the Romanians claim that, so I don't think that counts.
The Romanians do.
Okay, well, you've been in Romania. You've heard them claim it.
So but the only kind of, I think, concept of crafts that would actually take humanoid or human beings into the air.
Yeah.
Were balloons, and those existed. And those had existed for a little while.
But really not all that long.
Yeah. So prior to that, I think the concept of flight, humans in flight, and everything like that was just pure fantasy.
Yeah, it was not even just pure fantasy. It was almost just something you wouldn't even imagine.
Impossibility. Yeah, that's right.
It's just not even in the realm of fantasy.
Although, to be fair, you do have Da Vinci.
Right, Da Vinci, who sketched essentially an early helicopter.
Right. So, I mean, he was conceiving of it.
Right. But Da Vinci was one of the most brilliant men to have ever lived.
Right. So I think maybe part of the reason why all of a sudden there's this fascination with unidentified flying craft or objects is the fact that we do know that we can make things that fly.
Yeah.
And we are progressing in technologies that are probably mind-blowing. If you think about the beginning of World War II, where the aircraft that are being developed for that, and even during the war that have been developed, but most of them are prop-based. Of course, we do learn that the Nazis have invented the jet.
And then rocketry.
And then rockets start happening to U-2, and then, of course, von Braun and everything. But you're seeing just a rapid, it just must have been a fascinating time to see this change.
For all of human existence, you've had width and you've had depth, but you haven't had height.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you add height into the way you conceive of the world. And it's a radical change. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, people unfamiliar, we're so familiar with seeing stuff fly over our heads that we don't even give it a second thought.
Right. Exactly. The first time you ever saw a aircraft above your head must have been crazy for people in, the 1900s.
I know. I've even tried to conceive of that. Like, can you imagine never
having seen anything in the air other than
birds and stuff,
or something borne aloft by a tornado,
something like that, and to see like an object moving across the sky,
right? Well, and even watching it go up into the air,
right?
That craziness,
that has to have been just a wonder to see,
and opened up these new fantasies,
right? I say
another point is the advancement of astronomy, I think, because so Galileo discovered moons of Jupiter, and then you had, I think Newton made some astronomical discoveries, but it was the 1800s and the 1900s where astronomy really exploded, and we discovered just how much stuff is out there in space.
The universe is,
even the other planets in our solar system. I mean, Pluto wasn't discovered until the 1940s, I believe.
Is it a planet again?
No, it's still not a planet. Okay. Fun fact while we're talking about Pluto. From the time it was discovered and named a planet, named Pluto, to the time that it was declassified as a planet in 2006, it did not complete one full orbit around the sun. So a year on Pluto had not even passed.
So it wasn't able to go a year.
It was not even a planet for a full year by its own calendar, unfortunately.
What in Earth years, what is a Plutonian year?
Well, more than 70 years or however long. I don't know exactly how long.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
New avenues of just thinking about the world. I think that explains a lot of why we're so fascinated with UFOs, because it's still, even for us, who grew up with this stuff, for our great-grandparents, it would have been novel.
Right.
And so it's still, there's that kind of generational, like, this is still a new thing.
Yeah, and it opens up the science that was happening at that time, open up the possibility, at least of imagination, to be like, why can't we do all this stuff? I mean, we do go to space. We do land a man on the moon.
Have you ever watched any of the old science fiction movies? Like there's one that's, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it's a man rides a giant bullet to the moon.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that a French film? I mean, it's kind of one of the silent films from...
Maybe. It may be. I just watched it as a kid, and it's,
I think it's... I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was based on some kind of a Jules Verne story.
It is, yeah. And it's got that famous image of the man on the moon with the bullet sticking out of his eye.
Yeah, right.
That's people know that story.
He's kind of launched from a giant cannon.
Right. It's they put him in a giant gun and shoot him to the moon.
Yeah.
Which, it's not as far-fetched as you might think it is. Some of the more recent ways to get into space have been looking back at things like that, and like maybe that's what we need to be doing. All right, so we've talked about why we're so interested in with aliens, the history we have with aliens, all that stuff. So what has the U.S. government actually confirmed? What is it that has been testified in these testimonies we've been hearing all about? That's for me the real question.
Right. Of the moment, that's the interesting one.
Yeah. So in these testimonies, I think there's been three main people involved. The first one who's making the most extreme claims, the most interesting claims, is named David Grush. And he's saying that not only are UAPs, which is the term they're using now, and we'll talk about that in a second, not only are they real, but some of them have crashed with pilots inside, and the U.S. government has those crashed craft with the pilots. And further, the pilots were non-human biologics.
That's how he put it.
That's how he puts it, which means...
Now, he is
I think a retired major is...
Is he U.S. Air
maybe
Force?
Someone else was the major.
U.S. Air Force. Is he currently a member of the U.S. Air Force?
I don't think he's employed by the US government at the
and he was an intelligence officer. So he's kind of a pretty potentially credible witness.
Okay, so he is a U.S. Air Force officer and former intelligence official.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah, he's somewhat credible, and you'd think if he was off his rocker, someone would have come forth with evidence and been like, "This guy's nuts. Don't listen to a word he's saying." By now, and no one has.
And so his biggest kind of bombshell claims are what you were just saying,
the non-human biologic pilot.
Non-human biologic pilot.
But Thomas, can you give an example of what a non-human biologic pilot would be?
A monkey.
That's true, isn't it? A monkey in an airplane that crashed would be a non-human biologic.
That would be. That would be.
Okay, so it could be a monkey, it could be a cat, it could be a dog.
Could be a dog.
You know, it might be an alien, but it could be all these non-alien things as well.
Right. I mean, it sounds more unbelievable, except when you start asking those questions like that and say,
yeah, what does that really mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when a commercial tells you that they can get you something at a fraction of the cost. Well, 5/6 is a fraction, or even 7/6. That's also a fraction.
Yep.
So you got to dig into these specific terms they're using to understand what they're actually saying. So he's making these claims, and that's pretty impressive. He's saying that there are people studying this. There's been an extensive effort to cover this stuff up. He's making quite bold claims, but he hasn't seen this stuff himself. What he's claiming is he's spoken to people who have seen this stuff.
Okay.
So it's hearsay coming from.
Well, it seems like there's a mix of, yes, it's hearsay, but everything he's saying could be technically accurate.
It could be, yeah, right. And it could even be accurate in the way it sounds.
Yeah.
It's just that we have to actually talk to someone who's seen this stuff because he hasn't.
Right.
So for now, all we know is that maybe there's something. There are two other people who are giving testimony right now, Ryan Graves and David Fravor, and they were both pilots in the Air Force.
Okay.
And so
I think one was the Navy. Was it?
Okay. Yeah, one of them was Navy. What they claim, and this is actually confirmed, is to have seen unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is what UAP stands for. And so when they were in their craft flying around, they saw something they couldn't explain, and other people apparently saw it as well, and they also couldn't explain it.
Now, some of the footage that has come out of some of these sightings, were either of these guys responsible for that?
I don't actually know the answer to that. I think that the Pentagon declassified these videos.
Right. Okay.
And now these people are saying, yeah, I was the guy in that video.
Okay.
And this is what I saw. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah,
but I will have to fact check that. You can watch these videos, and it's kind of like Bigfoot videos, honestly. Mm-hmm. It's a blurry something, and it's moving, and it's if you are a pilot, I guess you can look at that and be like, oh, that's weird. But if you're a average person, you look at it and you're like, it's a thing that's on video. And that's really all an average person can tell you.
Unidentified flying object
and they just kind of look like blobs. Some of them are light, some of them are dark, and they do seem to move around.
But none of them look like flying saucers.
No, none of them are the classic flying saucer shape. None of them, have jet trails coming out of them. There's just nothing that really says this is a aircraft of any kind. It could be, for all I can tell, a Coke can falling out of an airplane.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Navy pilots know for certain that's not what it is. But from what I can tell, it might as well be.
It's clearly a mystery.
Right. It's definitely a mystery. There's something out there that they're not able to explain, and that's interesting because they have some pretty advanced sensors on their aircraft.
Yeah, and I do think the name change from UFO to UAP is actually helpful for this because...
So let's dig into that real quick. So UFO means unidentified flying object.
Yes.
And UAP has actually two meanings, but we're moving towards one. Unidentified aerial phenomenon, and then the meaning they're moving it towards, which is unidentified
anomalous
phenomenon.
Yeah. It's a mouthful.
It's an unidentified something that's there.
Yeah. So it might not even be physical. And I think that might be probably one of my questions is, are we seeing some type of
lens flare or
phenomena or something that looks like it's a potential object moving at just an incredible rate of speed or at a seemingly impossible for physics.
Right. Like one of the things that's occurring is that one of these aircraft moved 60 miles in under a minute, which is pretty incredible if true. That's really, really fast.
Yeah.
I think that's 360 miles an hour. Is that right? One thought on that, though, is something I learned back when this Titan submarine, that just the tragedy that happened with these people who were on the submarine that imploded.
Right.
When that happened, right as we actually found out what did happen to them, because there was a mystery for a little while, and then we found out, unfortunately, they died. Then we found out that I think it was the U.S. Navy had heard the sensor ping of the implosion. And they'd known about it for a few days, but no one talked about it. Well, I did research into why they didn't talk about it, and it's because they pick up things like this all the time. And sometimes it's literally nothing. It's just the sensors making something up that's not even there.
That was one reason, but I think the bigger reason is it's still classified technology that they have that can pick up these sounds from such distances.
Okay, well, that is an interesting point. But my point is that even this advanced classified technology, sometimes it just reports something that's just fake. It's just the technology having a bug, and it's showing you something, and it's not even there. So that's why they were skeptical at first until they had proof and evidence and could line it up. Okay, this sound happened then, and that would have been when the sub imploded.
I think they knew way earlier on that one, at least, what it was, but they were going to let the thing kind of play out. I think they kind of pretty much, once they knew that a sub had been there and then they heard the sound and then the sub is missing, they're probably like, most likely what we heard was...
Right. Well,
and so when
there's also the problem of the sensor tech seeing this, and then does he report it up the chain of command or not? And how long does it take to propagate to someone who actually can do something about it?
Maybe I think they knew, but they just were gonna not say until they actually had seen
proof,
the debris. Proof.
Well, it could be, but that's not really.
But like I said too, I think it has to do with. But I think this might actually connect to ours.
Okay.
And that is when you have tech that is top secret or classified, you're not going to be advertising that.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's kind of like what we were pointing at earlier in post World War II with all this
like Roswell.
Yeah, Roswell, all this development of technology. Yeah, they're gonna try to keep a lid on this stuff. If you're trying to develop new tech that flies, well, it's gonna go over places where likely people may live and see.
Right. And on Area 51, that place is famous for being where the aliens are kept.
Yeah.
And for having alien craft. And that's actually where the fastest manned jet ever created was tested. So that's not surprising that you'd get those rumors there.
Right.
Because the SR-71 is truly one of the wonders of the world in terms of engineering. It's just incredible how fast this thing could go and how stealthy it was.
Well, and it behooves the government to actually even promote these kind of
right. If it's an alien, it's not something we're building. Yeah, don't worry, China. It's not us. That's an alien.
You can promote it, or you can deny all aspects of it and just say, well, it's people are seeing things that aren't really there. However they want to play it up. Just keeping it a mystery is helpful.
Right. And on that note of the mystery, it kind of leads to the question, the idea of just how hard is it to prove or disprove something like this?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's incredibly hard unless you have a flying saucer land in Times Square and say, Klaatu brought an Ikto, which is from the day the Earth stood still. Then it's going to be really, really hard to tell if aliens have been to Earth or not. And I'll give an example from my life. You may know that aliens exist because you've seen it with your own eyes. But if someone else hasn't, they don't know that. So in my own life, I know in my area that there are mountain lions. Even though the government tells you, no, there's not mountain lions, they're extinct in your area. I've seen one with my own eyes walking in front of the road right in front of me. You haven't seen that, Thomas.
No,
so you don't know that there are mountain lions.
No, I don't. No.
So that's
all I have is your word.
All you have is my word. Yeah. So you can't know.
I don't know how trustworthy you are.
Exactly. So, maybe I was drunk or something. I know I wasn't, but you can't know that. And even a third person we know who recently was landing in a helicopter with his buddy, and he saw what he came into work and said, "Oh, I saw a mountain lion in this area when we were coming down in this helicopter." And he said, yeah, mountain lions are in this area. And then a couple of months later, he mentioned it again. And he was like, I don't know, maybe it was something else. So he talked himself out of that. Mm-hmm. So even if someone had seen an alien, they may talk themselves out of it. So it's going to be very, very hard either to believe anyone's claims about this or to know for sure if this is true if you don't have a physical alien object, a physical alien craft.
Well, I think there's also the idea of people talking themselves into thinking they've seen an alien.
Right, exactly.
Because it's kind of, because it's out there.
I mean, for all you know, I saw a cat-like dog walking across the road in front of me, and now I think it's a mountain lion.
Right. So this may explain, too, why, at least in the U.S., for example, there's so many reported sightings. Well, there's also a long history and a popular history of supposed alien sightings. But if you go into other places like Africa, how many reported sightings are there in Africa? There's a few, but hardly any.
Right, hardly any.
Which is it because
there's been historically a lack of the technology to capture or record this?
Or is it more that even those stories haven't actually existed in Africa? So there's not a word of mouth story about
there's just not the cultural information to make these stories up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
so
that's a good question.
I think we talked about this before, but it's like Loch Ness, the Loch Ness monster.
Exactly. Yes.
Same type of kind of.
Yeah, and
there becomes folklore, and then people want to say that they've seen it.
There is the perverse incentive of saying, "Oh, I've seen Nessie," and then you get to brag about that. Or if you're a local to that area, then you talk up stories of Nessie because it brings more tourists and you make more money at your shop.
Or even just to be fair, if you've heard about it and then you experience or see something that is just unexplainable to you, will you have something in the back of your mind that says, "Well, it could be."
Right. I saw something I can't explain, so I'm going to just assign an explanation to it, whether or not I can actually be sure that's correct or not.
Yeah, I had an experience personally kind of like this a couple of years ago. I was at a friend's house, and it was in the late afternoon, and we were sitting on his back deck, and the sun's still out. I think it was probably about 5 p.m, and it was a clear sky. And we're just sitting there looking, and then we just noticed this kind of dim light get brighter and brighter and brighter, and it just was stationary way up in the sky.
During the day?
During the middle of the day.
Huh.
And I was like, what is that? I was expecting initially, when I first saw it, I was thinking, oh, it's reflection of an aircraft flying overhead, but it wasn't moving. It was just sitting there.
And it was getting brighter.
And it was getting brighter, progressively getting brighter as the day, as for the next, I think it was about an hour and a half. And we were just like, what is this thing? We were thinking, has Huntsville launched a rocket or something like this? Is it right here or something like this? But because it was stationary for so long and it was obviously really bright, but it's well before stars come out or anything. And the sun hadn't set yet. And so then we're like, well, let's look and see if there's anything in the sky right now. And we found out it was a comet. And I can't remember the name of what the comet was, but it was one of those, just a weird phenomenon. You see it and you're like, that is just so.
It doesn't look like anything I can explain.
Right. Yeah. Couldn't explain, but it was a comet, and it was in the area for about a week, I think, where just between about 4 o'clock in the afternoon to about 6 is when it would really get bright and you could see it. Yeah, and so that was the explanation. So it's
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So maybe certainly some of these UAP sightings are going to be comets. Yeah, certainly some of them.
Something like that. And it's just one of those things where you see it and you it's just so strange. And one of the thoughts that went through my mind is this a new type of aircraft? What's happening?
Right. And we've all had the experience where we have our hat on our hat stand and a coat on the hat stand, and out of the corner of our eye, we're like, "Oh, there's a person there."
Yeah.
And no, it's just a hat and a coat. Right. So, we are more than capable of fooling ourselves on these things. So yeah, it's going to be very hard without physical, tangible evidence to prove or disprove aliens or UFOs or UAPs or any of this, really.
Right. And like we said before, how you're defining these things. Are you thinking when you hear it, alien aircraft with a extraterrestrial on board?
Yeah.
And I would say that is kind of the tag or the hook for this hearing and everything. But really, when you actually kind of dig down deeper, you're realizing, no, that's not necessarily what they're saying. When they use the term like non-human biologic, as we said, it could be a monkey or something. It doesn't have to be.
It could be a lizard person. And we know lizard people are real and on American Airlines. So it's this lady having kind of a meltdown on an American Airlines flight, pointing to another passenger, and we don't get to see who it is, saying that's not a real person. And, as soon as I heard about this, my first thought was, let me see who she's talking about. Is it a lizard person? So that's just kind of funny and topical, but not actually alleging that the person was an alien. It could just be, most likely she was offered drugs, offered meds.
Something was going on with her. Yeah.
All right. So the other question on this UAP hearings that I've been hearing is, why is this in the news now? And in the implication from a lot of people on TikTok and stuff is that it's a distraction. That the government is like, yeah, we know the economy's bad and you can't buy gas, but aliens are real. Look at that. Talk about that instead. So what do you think about that, Thomas?
Yeah, I do think there's some merit to it. The distraction campaign, kind of like it behooves the government when it's maybe doing these testing of different things. If people think it's aliens, it helps kind of distract and makes it silly. And will bring detractors pretty quick. Yeah, I think in this sense, it is a distraction let's take the two parties. For Democrats, it's a helpful distraction from what's happening right now with the investigation into the Biden, specifically Hunter Biden, or Hunter Gate, as we could call it, because there's a lot of damning information coming out about that. And
if you're on the left, you might say that it's a distraction from the Trump indictments.
Possibly, yeah. They might spin it that way too. I think that holds less water because Trump's all over the headlines, so I don't think that actually is the case. But the question might be, well, this is happening in the House when the House is controlled by the Republicans, so why would they allow for this kind of a charade if that's all this is? Yeah. Well, I think what is the value for the Republicans? Well, the value for the Republicans is the idea of being open-minded and willing to investigate potential government corruption or government cover-up. They want to be the party that is exposing government cover-up. And so if there's a cover-up of what's been happening with the UFO programs or these secret things like this, they want to be willing to be open and ask the questions.
Right, because that is part of what's being alleged by Grush, right? Is that there is a government cover-up. And I think one of the claims he's made at one point was that it's been decades that this cover-up's been going. Yeah, and so politically for them, that's helpful, and then it shows, hey, we're willing to ask the questions, even what questions that people some would say are crazy. Right, and you were saying earlier that it allows them to try to get out of the stereotype they've been put in of closed-minded Republicans. Yeah, like, see, we're open-minded. We're even talking about aliens. Right, exactly. Yeah, I think there's probably some of that going on, but I think mostly it's probably just that these claims are kind of being made now. These people are coming forward. These videos have been coming out for the past couple of years. And, frankly, I think a lot of people who were elected to Congress just to be able to sleep at night, they got to be able to say, yeah, I was in Congress on the committee that had the power to ask about aliens and I didn't. You know, just to be able to sleep at night, you got to say, yeah, no, I asked about the aliens.
Yeah,
so I think there's probably
too.
some of that. Just the people in Congress like pop culture too. So they have this fascination with aliens as well. Right. And I think there's probably a good chunk of it that's just, you know, if aliens are real and I prove aliens are real, then I go down in history. So I'm gonna make sure that this comes to Congress.
Yeah, there's that. I just thought of one more for the Democrats. They have loved to talk about the right, especially in entertaining conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. What better way to say that the right is just
misinformation, conspiracy theorists,
very susceptible to conspiracy theories by entertaining the idea that there are UFOs.
So the Democrats go along with this to make the Republicans look bad.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of these things play in. My gut is that this is just when it's happening and it's not deliberately a distraction on most of the people's part. I'm, you know, maybe at some higher up level with Chuck Schumer or somebody saying, yeah, go ahead with it to make sure that we can
if that happens, if it happens in the Senate, he's the head of the Senate.
Right. Well, I imagine he has some say about what the Democrats in the House do as well. So no, I don't really think it's a political distraction, but you know, it might be. And I think it's definitely involved.
Yeah. There's always, if you're in politics, there's always an angle.
Yeah. There's always an angle. That's true. All right. Yeah. So we've talked about, are there aliens? We've talked about what exactly is being testified. We've talked about why do we like aliens so much? Here's another angle. Is the existence of extraterrestrial intelligent life a threat to Christianity and the Christian faith? Because I think from people who are opposed to Christianity, they think it would be. And I think they, you know, kind of maybe want intelligent aliens to be real because then they get to say that Christianity is not real. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, Christianity actually teaches that there's extraterrestrial life.
Well, yeah, supernatural.
Supernatural. Yeah. I mean, there's angels and demons.
Yeah,
we know this. I do think it is interesting that the alien phenomena, as we know it, is relatively, like we said, relatively a 20th century phenomenon.
Yeah,
21st century. That also coincides with, in the West at least, specifically in the U.S., and you could say England and in the West.
Yeah,
a secularization has become the predominant worldview.
Materialism,
secular materialism. And so the idea of this alien life and everything like that fits in with a very kind of Darwinianistic, materialistic worldview.
Right. If you're a materialist who thinks that life on Earth emerged purely through chance when lightning struck a pool of amino acids,
right,
then you would, you know, necessarily assume that there's life on other planets and intelligent life even. Right. If it happened here, it's got to have happened somewhere else.
Yeah, what makes the Earth so special in that? It's a huge universe with millions of galaxies. Why would we think that that planet Earth is the only place where we have humanoid life, or intelligent life, I guess is the way they put it. And so that's why they would have, like you said, this belief that if there is intelligent alien life, it would be
a weapon against Christians, essentially.
Effectively, it would undercut the Christian claim.
Right.
I am skeptical that they're outside of, like I said, the supernatural, which we believe in, that there is actually another intelligent human or intelligent life on another planet that exists.
Right. Well, we haven't seen it, so it's just to be skeptical if you haven't seen the thing.
And I do think that if we were living in pre-Enlightenment or even right at the Enlightenment era, any of this kind of unexplained phenomenon would be explained by the supernatural.
Right. It's a miracle. It's an angel. It's a demon. Yeah.
Yeah. And that worldview doesn't see. It sees the existence of both. You could say the reality of the physical and the reality of the supernatural, and that they're interwoven.
Right.
We in the West or in the secular realm, we reject this idea of the supernatural, even though I think it's fascinating that, if I understand it, and speaking to Oppenheimer too, quantum
theory, quantum mechanics.
Yeah. Quantum physics or whatever. That's kind of engaging in this, trying to understand almost beyond the physical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That is what quantum theory is usually talking about.
Right.
It's about these things that, light being a particle and it's a wave,
Right.
and that's, well, it can't be both things. Well, apparently it can.
Right. So I don't know if that's an attempt to try to recognize that there's something more there than just meets the eye, as it were. But I would say that back to your question of, is it
extraterrestrial intelligent life a threat to Christianity or faith in God in general?
In the way that they construct it, if it actually was according to how they've defined it, yeah. But
according to the way they define aliens and the way they define Christianity,
right,
or faith in general.
Yeah. But I would say that from my understanding, no.
Yeah. And I'll kind of flesh that argument out. So I agree. From my understanding, no. If there are intelligent alien beings, it would do nothing to disturb my faith in Jesus Christ whatsoever, because the Bible doesn't really talk about anything that doesn't have to do with humans and their walk with God. That's pretty much what the Bible's about. There's histories and there's poems, but basically it's about humans and their walk with God and how should they relate to God. And so why would the book that's about humans and God talk about Vulcans and God? Because that's not part of the human relationship with God, right? So it just wouldn't bother me in the slightest.
Okay.
And I would assume that if there is other alien life, it's created by God, because I believe human life is created by God.
Well, he created the universe. He created
exactly.
everything. Yeah.
Exactly. But you outlined a theory that I think is a little bit even more likely if you're a Christian and you believe at least somewhat in materialism.
Yeah, well, I think that obviously this is a massive universe that God's created. And part of our concept of eternity with God, eternity in heaven, and I think there's the idea that once Christ returns the second time and wraps up this epic,
this creation.
Well, the creation will remain, but wraps up this time in history.
The period from the fall to
Judgment Day, right? Once that's concluded, then there's eternity, and eternity for all of his children, who we will exist for eternity with him.
Right. So
I think we'll be going and exploring the stars as part of that. God's creation is an expression of himself, right? His mind, his creativity. We're discovering it. We're learning more about it. We're appreciating it. We're glorying in it.
Right. So the idea is kind of that the universe is nearly infinite because, or maybe it is infinite, depending on what you believe, because humans are sort of infinite. At least saved, redeemed humans will be eternal from the point of their creation forward.
Right.
So they need all that space to have something to do for eternity.
Right. Well, it's part of, I think, they're glorifying God. I think there's this idea of discovering, and we can't exhaust. You can't exhaust the eternal, right? The unexhaustible can't be exhausted.
Correct. It's not really more incredible to say that God created the whole universe just for the intelligent life on Earth than it is to say in the Garden of Eden, when it's just Adam and Eve, that God created the entire Earth just for Adam and Eve. Right? They're both so much larger in scale than the beings that, sure, God could have created the whole Earth just for Adam and Eve, and he also could have created a whole universe just for Adam and Eve, because there's no difference for him in terms of effort.
Right. Well, yeah. No, it's not. Yeah.
Right. So but I will say
purpose is what the question is. Not effort, it's purpose.
Yeah. I will say I'm not sure if there is or isn't intelligent life out there, but I'm probably 90% sure that there is life out there. So that there's alien cats and dogs out there somewhere, or an alien grass on other planets. Maybe there's intelligent life, maybe there isn't. But I do believe that there's life out there somewhere else, but it's not random chance that caused that life to be. It's God. That's just my theory. I could be wrong, but that's where I lean.
To be fair, there is absolutely no evidence supporting it yet.
Right. None whatsoever. We have discovered life on one planet so far, and that's Earth.
Yeah.
So has the U.S. government confirmed that aliens exist, Thomas? Yes or no?
No.
No. The U.S. government has not confirmed that aliens exist.
Not extraterrestrial aliens.
Right.
There are
illegal aliens.
There are illegal aliens
by the millions
crossing into the U.S.
Yes.
on a daily basis.
But not extraterrestrial life. No, that has not been confirmed. Not even sort of. Not even extraterrestrial spaceships.
Craft, whatever that is.
Right, right. So our headline is clickbait, but you clicked. So you lose, we win.
Well, we didn't answer it in the clickbait. Just said question mark.
Right, right. That's true. All right. Well, I think this was a pretty good conversation, Thomas. I thought it was interesting.
I mean, it will continue. I mean, the fascination with UFOs and aliens is not going away.
Right. And hopefully Congress will follow up on some of these people they've been told they can talk to for more information, and we'll find out even more.
Yeah, we'll find out what these supposed craft are.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that if it has anything to do with current top secret technology development,
we'll basically learn nothing.
We won't learn much of anything. Yeah. Maybe in the future, we will discover what some of the stuff was they were working on.
All right. Final question. Do you want to find out that there are ET, flying saucer, little green men visiting Earth? Do you want that to be true, or do you want that to not be true, Thomas?
I guess I don't even conceive of it in that way, if that makes sense. It doesn't seem to, how would I put that? There's not enough of a plausibility for that, for me to even like.
You don't have a preference because you just don't really.
It's not a concept to me that has enough weight or gravity to even be.
To form that kind of opinion.
Yeah, I don't know how to put this, but it's like wanting something to be true that you know is just so outside the realm of possibility. It doesn't.
You don't want to engage emotion on this.
Yeah, to soberly think about it, like seriously think about it. It's fun. It's kind of like.
Well, I'll answer the question.
Yeah.
And for the point you just made, it's fun. So it's fun. I think it would be fun if there actually really were aliens visiting Earth and they were essentially harmless, or, you know, the stories we've been told the past 100 years about UFO sightings were true. If that were true, I think it'd be fun. So I kind of lean towards, I hope it's true, but I'm going to follow the evidence.
Yeah, I'm too much of a skeptic. I don't think there's any truth at all to any of that. I don't think there's evidence to support any of it, but it's fun to go to Roswell and.
Yeah, I would love to visit.
Go to one of those
touristy stuff.
Those UFO conventions or something.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas and Sterling. We hope you'll tune in next time. Bye.
Bye.